Okay, so you ready to dig into a classic today?
Absolutely. Fire away.
All right. How to Win Friends and Influence People. I mean, come on. Everybody's heard this thing.
Right. It's like the self-help book.
But here's the thing. It was published in 1937. 1937. And it's still flying off the shelves.
It's wild, isn't it? Like, what's the deal with that? What's the secret sauce?
That's what we're going to unpack today. A little deep dive here.
I am here for it.
So first off, Dale Carnegie, the author. I got to admit, when I first picked this up, I thought, oh boy, another one of these guys.
Yeah, let's get a little skeptical, right?
But digging in, I was kind of blown away. This guy wasn't just throwing out platitudes.
No, not at all. And the thing is, this book, it wasn't some calculated scheme to make a buck. It came out of a real need he saw.
Right. He was teaching public speaking, wasn't he? So he was seeing firsthand how people struggled.
Exactly. In 1912, he's already deep in this world, teaching professionals not just how to speak, but how to actually connect with people professionally, personally, the whole shebang.
So he was basically a relationship guru before that was even a thing. And his wife, Dorothy, got to give her props. She's the one who kept the revised edition going strong, right? Keeping it relevant all these years later.
Smart move, because the world has changed a lot since 1937. But even back then, Carnegie was onto something. The research that went into this book is insane.
Yeah, it's not just like, hey, smile more and people will like you, although
Yeah.
there is some of that in there.
Chuckles a little bit. But he was digging into biographies of like everyone. Caesar, Edison. Imagine the piles of books this guy went through.
It's giving me old library vibes, just picturing it, those stacks you're not allowed to touch.
And get this, over 100 biographies of Teddy Roosevelt alone. Just Teddy.
Okay, that's commitment. But it shows you this wasn't some quick cash grab.
No way. He was looking for the timeless stuff, the patterns of human interaction that always hold true.
Which I think is why it still resonates today. No matter how much technology changes us, we're still hardwired for connection.
Absolutely. That need to be understood, to have influence, it's primal, and that's what Carnegie tapped into.
So we've talked about Carnegie's research, but I got to be honest, that title, How to Win Friends.
Yeah, it feels a little, I don't know, manipulative, like some kind of game show or something.
Right, like, are we supposed to be keeping score here? But I think it's important to remember, back in 37, it was a different vibe.
Totally. It wasn't so much about tricks, more about like effective communication, building something real.
Exactly. And Carnegie says that straight up, it's not about surface charm. It's about genuine connection.
Authenticity. That's the good stuff.
Totally. And one story that really stuck with me, this employer, he'd managed to make, get this, 314 enemies at his company.
Oh man, 314. That's like a whole office building full of people who can't stand you.
Right. Talk about a hostile work environment. But using Carnegie's principles, this guy turned it around. Went from most hated to, like, genuinely respected.
That's a glow up if I ever heard one.
It shows this stuff isn't just about making friends at a cocktail party.
No way. This is real world impact. Work, careers, the whole 9 yards.
Because when you got trust, collaboration, that's when things get done.
Right. 100%. And honestly, I think that gets lost sometimes in how fast-paced everything is now. We forget the human side of things.
So true. And you know what else struck me? Carnegie's not just giving advice, he's giving homework. He tells you to reread, reflect, actually use this stuff in your life.
Oh, yeah. He was big on action, not just reading the words.
He even suggests keeping a separate engagement book. Like, whoa, track your progress.
That's like next level journaling. Imagine if we all did that, noted our interactions, how we reacted, what the results were.
You'd start seeing your own patterns, right? The good, the bad, the ugly, all of it.
Exactly. You'd see where you trip up, where you shine.
And maybe understand why some relationships just feel easier than others.
Self-awareness is key.
Speaking of awareness, one story that kind of blew my mind was about Two Gun Crowley, this gangster, hardcore criminal, but even he saw himself as the good guy.
It's wild, right? How our own perception can be so skewed. We've got to remember everyone's got their own story going on in their head.
It's like we're all the heroes of our own narratives,
Yeah.
even when we're, robbing banks.
Exactly. And that's why empathy is crucial. Not about condoning bad behavior, but understanding the why behind it. That's where real communication starts.
And that's tough, right? Like really trying to get inside someone else's head when they seem totally off the rails.
Yeah, you think you'd have to completely rearrange your brain to see it their way.
Totally. And history's full of examples where those different perspectives, they collide. And it's not pretty. We were talking about understanding different viewpoints earlier. What happens when you get two really strong personalities, brilliant minds, but totally different communication styles? What happens when they clash?
Oh man, you're talking about some serious fireworks. And maybe the biggest example is the Taft-Roosevelt feud.
Oh man, those two were like oil and water.
Right.
But they were both super accomplished guys.
Exactly. That's what makes it so interesting.
But wasn't Taft supposed to be like the nice one out of the two of them?
Right. Even Taft, Mr. Mild-mannered himself, he felt completely justified in everything he did, like he could not see another way to act.
Which just goes to show you, we all get trapped in our own heads sometimes.
Big time. We're all the stars of our own show, right?
It's a good reminder for all of us. Like when someone criticizes us, even if it feels totally bonkers, there's usually a reason behind it.
It might not be a good reason, but it's there.
Exactly. Okay, but speaking of handling things well, nobody did that quite like Abraham Lincoln.
Talk about grace under pressure.
Right. This is a guy who is known for his composure, but even he almost lost it with one of his generals.
Oh yeah, the letter to General Meade after Gettysburg, that was a close one.
Imagine Lincoln losing his cool. What stopped him from sending that letter?
Experience. He learned a hard lesson, actually the hard way. Criticism, especially when it's harsh, it can do real damage.
I mean, I get that, but Lincoln, what happened?
He'd actually fought a duel back in the day over a letter he wrote.
Wait, seriously? A duel? Okay, we need another deep dive for that story.
For sure. But the point is, he knew words could wound. So when it came to Meade, he took a different tack.
So instead of yelling, he gave Meade a hug.
Pretty much. Well, not literally, but he tapped into something even more powerful than the urge to criticize, the need to feel appreciated.
So instead of tearing Meade down, he built him up.
It's pure Carnegie, that human desire to be seen, to be valued. It's huge. Even Carnegie himself said that understanding that was a big part of his own success.
Okay, so spill it. What did Lincoln actually say in that letter?
He starts by reminding Meade of his accomplishments, right?
Yeah.
The victories, the sacrifices, the weight Meade's carrying. And then he gently points out those missed opportunities, those areas for improvement.
So like catch him doing something right first, then bring up the other stuff.
Exactly. Praise publicly, correct privately. It's a classic for a reason.
It really is. Did it work? How did Meade take it?
Meade stepped up, and honestly, it probably saved his career. Instead of alienating a good leader, Lincoln used that understanding of human nature, to inspire better performance.
And that's a lesson that goes way beyond the battlefield.
For sure. Whether you're running a company, a classroom, even just dealing with your family, that ability to criticize without crushing someone, that's golden.
It's all about how you say it.
Right. Tone makes all the difference. Like that other story we talked about, the guy who lost his voice, couldn't even talk, but still closed $1 million deal.
That one blew my mind.
Mm-hmm.
How do you even do that?
He was the ultimate listener. Couldn't talk, so he had to make sure the client felt heard, understood, empowered. He had asked these really insightful questions.
He let the client talk themselves into it.
Exactly. It wasn't about him persuading, it was about creating the space for the client to persuade themselves.
Powerful. And kind of sneaky in a good way. Like that story about the tenant who got his rent reduced just by being the only one not complaining.
Right. Everyone else is yelling. He's like, hey, I get it. Times are tough.
And boom, rent reduction.
It's about remembering we're all in this together, right? Everyone's got their own thing going on. When you approach things with that understanding, even when you're frustrated, amazing things can happen.
So much of what we've talked about comes back to that, doesn't it? Just that basic need to be seen, to be heard, to be respected.
It's the core of it all. Not about tricks or manipulation. It's about that shared humanity. That's where the real connection happens, the real influence.
And sometimes that means we got to check ourselves.
Right.
Our own assumptions, our own biases.
Absolutely. Like that story about the kid who wanted to burn down the park. Instead of just punishing him, someone took the time to connect with him, see things from his perspective, and that changed everything.
It really makes you think, how often do we just jump to conclusions?
It's easy to do. But Carnegie's message is clear. Choose empathy over judgment, connection over conflict, and watch what happens.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a little challenge. This week, try seeing the world through someone else's eyes, even just for a little bit. That coworker who bugs you, a family member you don't get, even a stranger on the street. Just take a moment, walk in their shoes. You might be surprised what you learn, and hey, you might even win a few more friends along the way.